I'd like to welcome our panel. Today we are looking at AI, ethics, and the workforce. So really what we want to get into is, what does artificial intelligence in the workforce look like in 5 years, in 10 years? Can AI act as ethically or not than humans? So we're going to dig into some of these issues with our panel. And Drue, you have a very unique perspective as an artist, but also technologist. When we talk about AI, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think it's interesting because the definition of artificial intelligence keeps changing. Every time we make a new milestone or cross a new frontier, then we say, oh, really, that's not really AI, and we keep achieving more and more difficult things. So it's interesting because it's a moving goal line.
Moving goal. So there are ethical concerns here. I'm just going to run through the panel. What do you think are the biggest challenges around the ethics in the context of AI moving forward?
Well, I think that humans can be jealous, they can be petty, they can be evil, but most of us are aware of our moral failings, whereas AI is not. And so human may be immoral, but an AI can be amoral, which is to say beyond good and evil, which is what Nietzsche spoke of. And this concept of beyond good and evil is what inspired Hitler. So it's quite disturbing. But then we go back to this other question of, do we want AI to be able to be jealous, to be able to have these different, to be depressed, to have these different emotions? What would that be like? And if they became such sensing beings, were we to create machines that could suffer? Another really interesting ethical question, although it may sound far-fetched, but I think it's very plausible, is what does it mean if we make machines in the future suffer? And right now we say, oh, who cares if the machine suffers? But you know, it was just 200 years ago in America that people believed that black people couldn't suffer. They just didn't think it was possible. And we don't think this is possible now, but it might be in the future. And then that's a whole other interesting set of ethical questions.
Maybe, just maybe. Christian. Drue, I wanted to ask you, so from your perspective, Olivier said that, does it really matter, emotion, versus the cognitive side? What's your perspective of that?
Historically, emotion has been at the periphery of the artificial intelligence community from the research and academic point of view, but it's actually becoming more and more central because, well, emotion is central to human communication, and it's germane to all of these cyber-human interfaces that we're building. And so companies, for example, like Affectiva, it's a fellow YGL of ours that is using AI to detect emotional states. Those companies are becoming really important. And you can just imagine how this will play out in, say, an autonomous vehicle that senses the mood of the driver and if they're getting sleepy or if they need some music to perk up, or an AI that senses the mood of the employees or the people that are in the building working, but it can also perhaps manipulate the people as well. So there's some interesting ethical questions. But just in general, it's a really big problem of bias overall in AI in terms of the data sets that we have. So for the first time in history, have availability of really large data sets with 90% of our data being created like in the last 2 years, but it's heavily biased, and the data's biased, and then the algorithms are biased as well. And so we have to just be really vigilant about it. And I think one way to mitigate that is just to have a lot of people involved in the conversation, a lot of people involved in the public discourse around artificial intelligence, people from all walks of life and all disciplines and all backgrounds, so that we can try to be vigilant about that.
So Drue, has the train left the station on the inequality gap?
No, I think that all of these questions of these technologies in the fourth industrial revolution, whether it's artificial intelligence or virtual reality, we're really at the dawn, and so it's very much hangs in the balance. And I think it's really incumbent upon us to get involved. And I think that one of the things that we can do, again, to mitigate this inequality is to understand that there are creators inevitably, there are the creators and there are the consumers of this technology. There's inevitably a small group of creators, and then there's like a large group of consumers, as if by a digital umbilical cord, that are going to be just sitting back and kind of passively consuming, whether they're virtual reality worlds or AI-driven experiences. And so the more that we can get different people to get involved in creating as opposed to consuming, we'll be able to spread the benefits of these technologies.
All right, so we have time for one last question, so I will ask each of you. Last year, Stuart Russell, professor of computer science at UC Berkeley, claimed that AI will be as impactful as the discovery of fire. Do you agree or disagree? Drue?
Is AI on the level of fire? Well, in Silicon Valley, we love our hyperbole. But as far as AI where it is now, whether that's better ad retargeting or even autonomous vehicles, I would say no. But if we talk about the singularity and what Ray Kurzweil and others are describing in that sense, well, then most definitely. But where we are right now, it's not yet at the ground level of that scene from Space Odyssey where we have man's ancestors discovering the first tools. We still have to go a little further. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's important to make AI an interdisciplinary space, because if you have a lot of specialists who are very deep in their own domain and their own kind of chambers, they're not going to be able to advance this space because AI cuts across all these disciplines. So if you have computer scientists who don't understand regulatory frameworks or aren't also engaging with philosophers or even historians, then they're going to be building a very narrow version of the technology. So we need to bring all these people into the conversation.
Thank you. And our outcome is that we are out of time. So AI, ethics, and the workforce, thank you for such a diverse set of perspectives. I think the audience probably enjoyed this thoroughly. Thank you, Mohit, Christian, Drue, Olivier. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.